Hi everybody and welcome to our last video. This is section 8 reports for ECDL databases. So this is going to be our last video and it's going to be the last object as well, the fourth of the four objects that we've looked at throughout this course. We started with tables, the most fundamental object, and then we moved on to queries. And in the previous video we looked at forms, and now finally we're ready to look at reports. So by the end of this video you're going to be able to hopefully create a quick report, modify and delete existing reports, preview and print reports, sort data in a report, group data, perform calculations, and then finally export data to various formats. A lot of the things that I've just mentioned are going to sound very similar to what we did in forms. And in fact in queries. We're going to be able to create a quick report, modify and delete existing ones, preview and print them, sort data. The only differences are when it comes to grouping data in reports and when it comes to performing calculations. We didn't do that in forms or queries, but we are going to do it in reports. So that's basically in a nutshell what we're going to be doing for the remainder of this course and for the remainder of this video. So in the next section, this is the introduction. In the next section we're going to jump right in and look at how to create a quick report. Okay, let's see how to actually jump in and create a quick report. First of all, what is a report? Why would we want to create a report? Reports are usually used to present selected information from either a table or a query. In databases, what we do is we store records in tables. We store data in tables in the form of records. And then we've seen that we can create a query to get out a certain subset of those records. So when we're interested in looking for certain information from a table, we create a query. So I might want to see how many books we have from a particular author in the database for our bookstore. Or I might want to see how many students are doing a particular course in a college or something like that. I create a query to extract those records. And then based on that query, what I can do is I can create a report. And the report is an object itself, just like tables and queries and forms. And what we normally do then is we print out the results of the report. We actually print the report object. We looked at how to print forms as well, but we saw that most of the time forms are designed to be used on screen. You don't print them. But reports, 9 times out of 10, you're probably going to print them. And very often the person you're giving the report to isn't a database person. They may not be an IT person at all. They may be a manager. They may be somebody in charge of purchasing or something like that. All they're interested in is the data, the information. They may not have ever used Access at all. They may not want to know anything about it at all. They may not need to know anything about Access. All they're looking for is the raw data, the actual information. So very often reports are formatted in a kind of a user-friendly, nice, kind of aesthetically pleasing way so that it's easy to actually read the information in them. You don't have to do that, of course, but very often they are. So reports are pretty important for actually giving a summary of information. You can base a report on a table, in which case you're just basically getting every record back from the table and then creating a report based on that and printing that out. But more often than not, you're probably going to base a report on a query. Not all the time, but more often than not, because again, it's specific information that you're looking for. The good news is a quick, simple report can be produced by Access with virtually no involvement at all from the user. Just in the same way that we did forms, we can create a very quick report with basically no user input from us. So I have the CIA1 database opened here, and I'm going to click on the Create tab. And again, you can see I have tables, queries, forms, and reports. These are my 4 objects. We've already seen these 3 groups here. Now I'm going to go over to reports. And you can see all of the tables that are down along here on the left-hand side. And I've got forms as well. If you look here in reports, this is the quick report, but I can't actually click on it. It's actually grayed out at the moment. And the reason for that is I don't have any tables selected over here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select a table. I don't have to open it. You can if you want, but you don't need to. But you have to have a table at least selected before you can actually create a quick report. So I'm going to base my report on the products table. Let's just open up the products table very quickly to give you an idea. It's very short. There's only 21 records in it, and it's only got 4 fields, so 4 columns: product reference, product price, and supplier reference. Okay, so I'm going to close that down. I'm going to make sure that it's still selected, and I'm going to click once on report. And when I do, I get the following, and that's it. That's the report created. The report is going to be shown automatically in what's known as layout view. Again, very like forms, we have different views down here. We have design view, we have layout view, we have print preview, and we have report view. So report view would be kind of like form view. Then we have print preview, which will give you a preview of what it would look like when printed. Then we have layout view, which is what we're in at the moment. And then finally we have design view. So the design view and layout view are very similar for reports and forms, and their function. In other words, design view allows a much more granular, fine-tuned way of viewing the report and of changing it. Whereas layout view, which is where we are at the moment, gives you the data in the fields. So it's very useful for seeing, for instance, are my fields wide enough for the data that's in them. But by default, when you create a report in Quick Report, up in the Create tab, you saw that we clicked on Report up here. So when you create a report based on Quick Report on a particular table, it's going to be displayed in Layout View. And that's what we're in at the moment. You can see that Layout View is selected. Okay, we have we have 4 different tabs. Remember that the tabs that we had for dealing with forms? Well, we have 4 tabs. We have Design, Arrange, Format, and Page Setup. So these 4 tabs have now appeared because I have now created a products form or a products report, a report based on the products table. I haven't saved this report yet. It only exists in memory, but these 4 tabs have now become available to me. So there's a lot of different tools underneath these 4 tabs that we can utilize in order to change our report, change how it looks and how it works, and so on and so forth. Let's see. We're going to see what this looks like when we go to print it. I'm going to click on File, and I'm going to click on Print, and I'm going to click on Print Preview. And this is what it looks like. Okay, this all fits on one page, page 1 of 1. We can also zoom in and out like this, and so on and so forth. And very similar to forms as well, what we can do is we can, emails coming in from UCC, we can click on landscape, we can click on columns, and so on and so forth. This wouldn't have been available in forms, but we can reduce or increase the number of columns and change the spacing, but we don't need to do that. So portrait and landscape, we can change our portrait and landscape, we can change our margins, we can change the size of our page, and so on. We can do all of that stuff. We'll be looking at exporting later on in this video. So I'm going to click on Close Print Preview because I'm not actually going to print this. Some other things, basically, we've got our 4 columns. Remember, we had 4 columns in the products table, so we have 4 columns in the report. And all of the records from the products table are then placed into each row. That's all there is to it. We also have a nice header. We have a footer down here. In the footer section, it just gives page 1 of 1. In the products, or in the header section of the report, it gives the name of the table, a default name of the table. We can change this. It gives a date and a time. The date is in long format, and it gives a little graphic here as well. So you can imagine printing this out and giving it to somebody so that they can look at the number of products that are in stock at the moment, perhaps. That's all. So let's save this because this doesn't exist as a file yet. If I go to close this down, I'll be prompted that I need to save the changes, or I'm going to lose it if I don't save it. Exactly the same as saving any other object. We can do the following. We can click on the Save button up here, and the Save As box will pop up. I can hold down Control and S. Again, the Save As box pops up. I can go to File, Save. Again, the Save As box pops up. If you want to be very long-winded about it, you can go to File and Save As, and then Save Object As, because it's an object within the database that you're saving, and then click on Save As, and again, the Save As box pops up. Or I can right-click and I can go to Save. I'm right-clicking on the tab here and I'm going to Save. And I'm getting the Save As box as well. So I'm just going to Control and S because I'm a keyboard kind of guy. I like using the keyboard whenever I can. So I get the Save As box, and we need to give this a name. You can see that Access is suggesting the report name Products because that's the table that we've based it on. It's not a great name. I'm going to say Products List Report. Okay, Products List Report. And then I'm going to click OK. And now we have a new section down here in our Objects pane. We have Reports. And I can close this down, and at any stage at all, I can double left click on Products List Report to open it up. So easy enough. And again, if you're wondering, and you'll be right in saying this, if I add more products to the products table, So if at the moment I have 21 records, if I was to add another 10 records, or even just another one record, they would be included the next time I opened up the products list report. We would see these products here. In fact, I'm going to do that now. I'm just going to very quickly add, I'm going to close down the report, and I'm going to add, just make up LSA. I have no idea what these things are. I'm just going to type in new product, and I'm going to make it a euro. And supplier reference, I'll just say IY, and that's it. Now, I didn't need to save that because the minute I went onto the new row, that record has now been saved to this table. So I'm going to close this table down and now open up my products list report, and you can see that my new product now appears in my products list report. So just like queries, they're dynamically updated. When you open them, they always take, when you open a report, it's always going to take the most up-to-date information from the table on which it's based. We'll look at another example of creating a quick report, but this time we'll create it on a query. I've got the Daily One database open, which, as you might recall, is the database for the mechanics or the garage. I'm going to create a query because I don't have one at the moment, and I'm going to do it using query design, and I'm going to just base it on the vehicles table, just the vehicles table. So I'm going to click add, and I'm going to click close. This is a good refresher for our queries. The fields I'm going to include in the query, I'm just going to include the registration number, the model, and I'll include the previous owners as well. So just, and I'll include the price as well. So I'll just include those 4 records. And I'm not going to specify any criteria. Well, actually, you know what? I will. I'm going to specify the following criteria, just to give you an idea of the report exactly returning or containing the information that a query does contain. I'm going to, for the price criteria, I'm going to look specifically for cars that cost more than, let's say, 10 grand, and see what happens when I run this. And I only get 2 cars back. Okay, so I'm going to save this. I've right-clicked on query 1, and I'm going to just call it owners. Click on owners. Great. And now I'm going to close down the owners query. So that's my new query, owners. Now I'm going to create a report based on queries. So you can imagine somebody might come along in the garage and they might say, I need to know exactly how many cars we have at the moment within the garage that are costing more than 10,000 euro. But they don't want to be staring at a database screen. They just want a piece of paper. They want you to hand them a piece of paper that's going to contain the information that they need with the relevant fields that we've already included in the query. And we've only included 4 of them. So I go to create. I go to report. Now, don't forget, beforehand, if I was to click on report right now, because the repairs table is selected, the quick report will be based on the repairs table. What I want to do is left click once on the queries object. I've only got one object in there, queries, and it's called owners. I just created it. Now when I left click on report, quick report is created, and it's based on, essentially what we're seeing here is the output of the query. If I run the query, I'll see this, but if I see it here in the report, it's just better formatted, okay? So think of a report as being a better formatted version of what's in a table or what's in a query. And that's it. That's all there is to it. I'm going to just close down my owner's query, and I'm going to save the owner's report. I'm going to right click and stuff, because don't forget, this does not exist yet as a file or as an object. So I have to save it, because if I close it without saving it, I lose it. So I'm going to right click and go to save. I could also hold down Control S or do any one of the other methods for saving that we've seen. And I will call it owner's report. Okay, and now that's it. Okay, and just very quickly, if I add in another vehicle, I'm just going to literally type in some very basic information, and I'll say 2001 mileage. I'll say miles. I'll say it's blue. Nissan, I guess. Previous owners, I'll say 4. And let's say the price is going to be, I suddenly realized that 10 grand was a ridiculous price to put in for a repair job. I was thinking of cars actually being bought, but nonetheless, I'll still put in 12 grand. Let's say page, we'll just say yes. All right, so that's my new TYE 627. close down the report, close down the vehicles table. If I now double left click on owner's report, the new car that I just put in, I put in 120 grand. That's a hell of a repair job. But you get the idea. It's greater than 10 grand because in the queries, or rather the owner's query that I created, I specified the criteria to only return vehicles in which the price was greater than 10 grand. And the new vehicle that I put in fits that criteria, and then some, 120 grand. But the point is made. The point is that the new vehicle has been included. So again, it's important to remember that reports will take in, automatically they'll update, they'll take in the newest information available in a table, or in this case, in a query. You can see there's a total down here. We're going to be seeing how to do that very shortly, how to get a running total. Again, that's something that might be very, very useful, because you might want to get an idea of, let's say, how many units of a certain product do we have in stock at the moment, and what's the sum total of all of those products. So that's all there is for quick report. In the next section, we're going to look at doing what's known as a grouped report using the wizard. In this section, we're going to look at how to make a report using Access's report wizard, and we're going to make what's known as a grouped report. In the previous section, we saw how easy it was to create a report known as a quick report. And a quick report, the steps for creating it are very similar to the steps for creating a quick form. Remember, when we have an object selected over here, such as a table or a query, when we clicked on form, Access created what was known as a quick form based on that table or query. And it didn't ask us anything about input design or style or formatting or anything like that, and it included all of the fields from that table or query. We just did ones based on tables, we didn't do one based on a query. But the point is that all of the fields were included. It's possible to create reports, as we saw then, in very much the same way. We click on report and an immediate report or a quick report is created. But it's also possible to create reports with more control over the output. The problem with the wizard is that it takes all the control away from you. So we might want to specify exactly which fields we want to include in a report. In forms, most of the time you're probably going to want to include all of the fields in a form, because when somebody is actually coming to input data into the database, they'll probably want to put data in for each field in each record. But in a report, it depends on what the person is looking for. They may want to see only certain fields for each record. So the report wizard isn't great for that, but when we do a report, blank report isn't great for that, but report wizard helps us to actually really fine-tune it, and it also helps us to do what's known as grouping. And grouping means that we can group the data in the report so that records containing the same information, like all houses from the same town or all books from the same author, in other words, data from a particular field can appear grouped together. And the wizard will help us in this process by asking step-by-step questions, as it always does. So let's see how to do it. I've got the houses database open. I've got there's a report in there already called houses. I'm going to create another one. And this time I'm going to click on report wizard. So I don't need to have any object over here selected. I click on report wizard, and the dialog box looks very similar to the form wizard. The first thing Access needs to know is, what are we basing this report on? Are we basing it on a table, or are we basing it on a query? Now, a lot of the time you're going to base a report on a query, because the trick is you have a table with records in it. You're going to create a query to extract certain information from that table. For instance, all students doing a particular course, or all books by a particular author, and then you're going to create a report based on that query. And then somebody will want to see an actual hard copy of that report. In this particular instance, I'm not going to base it on a query. I'm going to base it on a table, and the table that I'm going to base it on is the houses table. All right, the houses table. Now, it's already selected for me, but if it wasn't, I could select it from the drop down arrow here. So I've got houses selected, and here's where we can choose which fields we want to put into the report. Just like the form wizard, we can include a field at a time by clicking on the right arrow, and we can then uninclude, if you like, or de-include those fields by clicking on the left arrow. Or I can include all of them at the same time by clicking on the double right arrow, and I can take them all off the selected fields pane by clicking on the double left arrow. I'm going to include them all, and there's a reason for that. I'm just going to basically throw everything, the kitchen sink, into this report. Because at the end of this, I should note that this report, when we're finished it, is going to look horrible. It's going to look really confusing. And one of the reasons is that we're throwing so much information into the report, so it's going to appear on the page. Don't worry when you see this report at the end of this particular section of the video, because I'm going to step through it and I'm going to explain very carefully what each thing on the page means. And that's why we're putting so much information on it. It's kind of going to be information overload. That's not to say that sometimes that you will need to do that, however. So I'm putting all of the fields in from available fields over onto the selected fields, which means that all of these fields are going to appear for each record in the houses table on our report. And I'll click next. The next section is where we add grouping, and I mentioned at the start of this section that grouping lets us group records together containing the same information in a particular field. So for instance, I could group based on any of the fields in the houses table. I could group the records based by town or address or type. I'm going to base them by town. Town is the first field in the list over here, so I'm going to click on the right arrow, and now you can see over here how it's going to appear on the record. The town is going to appear first of all, and then the houses in that town with all of their associated fields, their address, their type, and so on and so forth. You can actually group on multiple levels, but for this particular example we're just going to group on one level, on the town level or on the town field, and I'll click next. Now we have two pieces of information that we can supply in this step of the wizard, the sort order and the summary information. So I'll explain what both of those are. We know what sorting is. We can sort records by any field in a table, so we can sort by town or address or postcode in this particular table. And we can actually sort records by up to 4 fields in either ascending or descending order. Now again, we're not going to sort by more than one field in this example. We'll just sort by one field. And we do this by selecting the down arrow for the first option. And now town is not available because we're grouping by town, so that wouldn't make sense, but we can sort by any of the other fields. So town is not available to us because we're grouping by town, but any of the other fields for each record, address, type, occupied, and so on, we can sort by any of those. And I'm going to sort by type. So in other words, what we now have is we're going to have records grouped by town, and they're going to be sorted by their type, so bungalow, semi-detached, terraced, or whatever. We can sort in ascending or descending order. Ascending is the default, so it's selected for us automatically. That's A to Z. If I wanted to do it in reverse order, Z to A, I can click on the ascending button, and the ascending button becomes descending. But I'm going to leave it set to ascending. So I'm clicking on descending to move it back to ascending. Switch it back to ascending. That's our first step. The second step are what are known as summary options. Now you don't need to do this in this step of the wizard, but we saw an example of it there in the first section when we looked at the report, the quick report that we generated. There was a running total at the bottom. So I'll explain how this works. If I click on summary options, I get up this additional dialog box. I'll move it over here. There are 2 fields in the houses table that we can sort on. The only 2 fields that we can sort on, that we can summarize. And the only 2 fields that we can summarize are price and bedrooms. This makes sense if you think about it, because you can't add up towns, you can't add addresses, you can't get a summary or a minimum or maximum or average or a sum of postcodes. The only fields that you can get a summary value for are numerical fields. So things, in this particular example, price and bedrooms are the 2 numerical value fields in the houses table. Price is a currency field and bedrooms is just a numbers field. So you might want to see exactly what the sum total is of all the houses, or you might want to get an idea of the average price. And we can look at the minimum and maximum price as well, and the same for bedrooms. Now sometimes it wouldn't make sense maybe to get the minimum maximum maybe for bedrooms, and sometimes depending on the field it would, but I'm only going to include the sum, average, min and max for the price field, and I've done that by simply ticking the checkbox underneath each one. So we're throwing a lot of information into this report here. A lot of the time you won't be doing a lot of this stuff. You might only want the sum, or you might only want the average, but I'm throwing them all on. And we're just going to leave this set over here, and we'll ignore this calculate % of total for sums. These can be useful sometimes, but we'll ignore them for now. And we'll leave bedrooms cleared. We're only looking for the sum, average, min and max for the price values for each record in the table. So I'll click OK, and that's those 2 pieces of information now set. My sorting order, I'm sorting the records by type in ascending order, and in summary options I have asked Access to summarize or basically add up the price for each property, the average price, the min and the max. Okay, so the sum for all of the properties, the average, min and max. Click OK. And now I'll click on the next button, and here's where we can choose to lay out the report, and we can lay it out in what's known as stepped, block or outline. Stepped is the default, and it's the one you'll be going with most of the time. if I click on block, it's very difficult to see really. They give you a little preview over here, but it's not very clear. It might be a bit clearer. I might do one example of each and show you the difference between the three. Most of the time you'll be using stepped, and that's why it's the default one. And we'll see it'll be easier to see when we actually have the report finished, and we're almost finished doing it. We leave this box ticked down here as well. Adjust the field width so all fields fit on a page. Access will try to fit everything that it can on one page. We'll change the orientation as well, because we know that we have quite a few fields going across, so portrait is probably going to be too narrow. We'll try landscape and we'll see how that looks. We'll see how Access does with it. Again, bear in mind the report wizard isn't perfect in terms of formatting, and it gets a lot of stuff not wrong so much, but it makes a bit of a dog's dinner of it sometimes, and we'll see that shortly. But in the next section of this video, or the section after this section, we'll see how to fix that and how to fine tune it. Again, fiddly, a bit cumbersome, but not difficult once you know exactly what you're doing and what you're clicking on. And don't forget to keep in mind exactly what you're doing as well, not just how you're doing it, as I always keep stressing. So I've got my stepped layout chosen over here. I've got my landscape orientation set, because I know that I'm going to want quite a bit of space this way as opposed to this way. And finally, I've asked Access to adjust the field width so that all fields fit in the page. And that's it. I click on next and I'm at the last stage of the report. And this is where I get to name my report. Now it's going to base the name, there's already a houses report there already, which is something I was doing in a previous section. Houses one is obviously a terrible name. Houses isn't a great name either for a report, but I'm going to rename this one. I'm going to call it Grouped Houses Report, because it's a houses report and I've grouped my data. You can call it anything you want, obviously, but it's a good idea to always name your object something relevant and meaningful, so that you know by looking at the object what you're going to get when you double click on it. That's it. We'll preview the report. We'll leave this ticked, because most of the time you want to immediately preview the report to see what it looks like when you're finished. And I'll click on finish. Now don't panic, because you're going to see something that looks like a bit of a mess. And what Access has done is it's tried to fit everything across as best as it can. If I open up the houses table, you'll see that we have town, address, type, occupied, and so on and so forth, all the way across to status. That's the last field, the last column. It's done the best it can: occupy, price, bedrooms, garage, garden, heating, glazed, and so on and so forth. Status, it hasn't quite been able to fit on the page. We can also see a bit of a mess down here for price. We can see, you may remember from Excel, when it can't fit the numbers in, we get this these pound signs or hash symbols, and we also get this weird exponential thing going on. This is going to make more sense when we start to fix this. These are numbers, believe it or not, 4e plus 0. These are numbers, but it's just the column is not wide enough to display the numbers. So that's all that's happening there. So you can see it's on 5 pages as well. And if I cycle through, I can see that all of the houses are in there. All 41 or whatever it is houses are in there, or should be in there. But it looks awful. Okay. So I'm going to end this section of the video now, because what I want to do in the next section of the video is talk you through exactly this report, the format of the report, what exactly you're looking at based on the information that we specified that we wanted in the report. That's what I want to look at first of all, to make sure that you understand exactly what we got when we actually created this report. And then in the section after that, we're going to look at how to modify this report, how to, well, maybe not modify this one, but modify a report. We might come back and modify this one as well, because I want to give you multiple examples of how to fix a report that's been created using the wizard. Because as I said, the wizard in Access is not perfect, and it gets things not wrong so much. All the information is correct and it's there, but the formatting and the layout of it it's not great. I mean, if you were to hand this to somebody, they'd probably look at you and say, please come back when you fix this so that I can read all the information that I need. So that's what we'll do in the next section. We'll go through this report in detail in terms of the formatting and layout, and we'll see exactly why everything looks the way it does based on what we specified that we wanted when we went through the report wizard. In the previous section, we saw how to create a report using the report design wizard, and we created what was known as a grouped report. And we ended up with this, admittedly, this bit of a dog's dinner of a report. And as I was saying to you in the previous section of the video, the report wizard doesn't always get the formatting right. All of the data is correct. It's just pulling the data from the table that we asked it to, but the formatting and the layout of it, the wizard doesn't always get right. So in the next section, what we're going to do is we're going to see how to modify a report to tidy it up. But before we do that, I think it's important to go through the report that we just created to give you an idea of exactly why it looks the way it does and what we're actually looking at. I've got the grouped houses report open here on the page. Remember, this is what you would actually be printing out and giving to somebody. Except if you printed this out and gave it to somebody, they'd probably tell you to fix it and come back when you had it fixed, because we can see that a lot of the information is not displaying properly. It's correct, the information is correct, but it's just not displaying properly. I'm going to open up the houses table, and just to recall, we have 33 records. Well, at least I have 33 records in my houses table. You may have more, you may have less, but you're certainly going to have in or around 30, at least 30 records. And we know that there are, I think it's 13 different fields. So what we asked Access to do was to create what was known as a grouped report. Now, what do we mean by group? Well, when you're grouping stuff, what you're doing is you're including data in the report from records that contain the same information in a particular field. You're grouping them together. And this makes sense. If you look first of all at the town, we decided that we wanted to group by town. And we looked at town, and we see that we have a town called Aspatria. If I go into houses, I can see that I have one town called Aspatria. There's only one mention of that town. So I have this town here, and then I have the addresses of the properties in that town. And because there's only one town, obviously Aspatria, we can see that we have one address in there, which is 15 Waldron Way, and there it is. And then we have all the information for the various different fields, occupied, price, rooms, and so on and so forth. And that's the way it works. This is what we call the stepped report. Remember, when we were choosing the layout, it appears stepped because it's like a series of steps going down along here. Here's the town, and then here are the fields, and then here are the summaries. Okay, here are the summaries, sum, average, and so on and so forth. So it appears stepped. Now, don't worry too much about the layout. What's more important is the information that's being displayed the way we asked it to be. I'll go back to the houses table. Actually, no, I'll stay in the report for a minute, and that was our first town, Aspatria. Our next town was Cleaton Moor, and we saw that, again, we only had one property in Cleaton Moor. So if I go back to Cleaton Moor, one property, one entry for Cleaton Moor, and there it is, 66 Toad Road. It's a terraced cottage. There it is, 66 Toad Road. That's the address, occupied, price, and that's all the different information for the other fields and so on. Now let's go to one which has more than one property. So I'm going to pick, it's the next town, this one here, Cockermouth. Let's find out how many of those there are. There's 1, there's 2, there's 3, there's 4. There's multiple properties in that town. And we can see that we have, here's the town, here's the next town down after Cleaton Moor. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So can you see what I mean by grouping? We're simply grouping all the properties together via town. And we also had asked Access to sort the properties in ascending order. So that's why we have D first. And then if we had bungalow, for instance, then bungalow would have been first. And then we have detached. Well, we've detached first of all because there is no bungalow, and then terraced. So hopefully that's starting to make sense. That's the way we did it. Remember, when we created the report, first of all, we asked it to group it by town. And you can actually group in multiple levels, but we're only grouping it by town. And then we asked it to sort it by type. So that's why we're getting, let me see if I can go on to the next page and see if we can find some, yeah, here we go. So in Maryport, I've scrolled down along through the report, and Maryport has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 properties. So again, if I go back to my houses table, Maryport is mentioned here 7 times. In other words, there are 7 properties in Maryport in this table. And they are in the report being grouped together under Maryport. So we have the 7 properties here, and they are also being sorted in ascending order. So we have cottage first, then followed by any semi-detached, because obviously S comes after C, then obviously T comes after S, so we have terraced and so on and so forth. If there was a bungalow in Maryport, that would have been listed before cottage, because again, we're sorting them from A to Z, we're sorting them in ascending property. So that's the basis, that's the nuts and bolts of the report that we've just created. Now very finally, we also asked to do a summary of information for each record. And this is what's one of the things that's making this report look so untidy. Because what Access is doing is it's putting in this section here, can you see this section here, sum, average, min and max. And in the box it's putting in a number for the sum total of all of the properties in Aspatria, except I can't really see it properly because the number is too big to fit in the box. Let's have a look for a property. Let's have a look, let's go back down to that town where we had multiple properties, Maryport. And the only snag is we can't see any of the figures. Let's go back up to that Cockermouth town and let's see if we can see anything there. And we can. So we can see the summary for the town. There are 5 records. And we can't see the sum, average, but we can see the minimum and the maximum. So we know that the property with the smallest value in this town is 27,000 and the property with the largest value in this town is 38,000. Let's verify that. Let's go back into houses and let's go to, I'm going to sort this from A to Z. I'm going to sort them so that we can actually see all the Cockermouth towns together. And we can see that the most expensive one in Cockermouth is 38,000 and the least expensive one is 27,000. So that's what we have here. We have the minimum and the maximum here. So that's the advantage of putting in summaries. So you can imagine an estate agent who might have hundreds, if not thousands of properties, or certainly hundreds of properties, let's say for an average sized town. If he's maintaining a database, or for an average sized area, let's say he's doing multiple towns within, let's say, South Tipperary, he can pull up his database and he can go to Cashel and he would see all of the houses listed in Cashel. Let's say this said Cashel. He would see all of the houses listed in Cashel here, sorted in ascending order, and then he would see a summary for all of the properties listed in Cashel with the sum total of all the properties, so all of the properties added up. And then the average price of the properties, so that would be all of them added and then divided by the number of properties that there are. And then he would see the least expensive property, or at least a value for it, and he would see the most expensive property. And then that's it. And then you have the next town. So again, that's being grouped. There's only one entry for that, because if you look in the houses table, there's only one mention of Distington in the whole table. So that is a report. That's a report by Wizard. It does look fiddly and it does look horribly complicated when you do it and when you see it for the first time. And this is a bit of a mess. This is just the way Access does it. It doesn't always get the formatting right. So we're going to move on to the next section now, where we're going to look at how to modify or fix an existing report once it's been created. But I did want to step you through this section to show you exactly what you were looking at. And you're looking at exactly what you asked Access to do. You're looking at grouped reports, and each entry or each record per grouping per the town is sorted alphabetically, A to Z, and we also have a summary then for the price field. We ignored the bedroom field, but just for the price field. So that's what you're seeing, and hopefully it made some sense. Go back over this section of the video, and if it didn't, let it sink in. Look at the report as well on your own computer and just step through it and make sure that you know exactly what you're looking at. The good news is you're not going to be asked to do anything remotely as complicated as this in the exam, because as we all know by now, you only have maybe 2 minutes, maybe probably even less per question, so there just isn't enough time. So in the next section of the video, what we'll do is we'll look at how to modify a report, an existing report, so that we can tidy up the formatting and make it more presentable. In the previous section, we just walked through the grouped houses report that we'd made in the section before that again. I just wanted to do that to show you exactly what you were looking at and to hopefully alleviate any concerns that you might have had that reports are totally incomprehensible when you make them. They can look a bit confusing, but remember, this was just a stepped report, and Access gets the formatting wrong sometimes, especially when there's an awful lot of information on the screen. So in this section, we're going to look at how to modify a report. Any report can be modified after you create it. As we've seen now, a report produced by the wizard often doesn't display data in exactly the way that we require. So we're going to see how to fix that now. Not in this particular one, we're going to create a new one. Any area of report can be altered or edited or formatted in one of two views. We can do layout view, which is very like layout view in forms, where we can actually make changes to the report format while the actual data is being displayed. If you remember that from layout report or layout view in the form wizard or form design, we saw that we could actually create and make changes to the form in real time, if you like, while we were looking at the data from the records in the fields. Or then we could have gone into design view as well, which allowed much more finely tuned granular changes. It's the same with reports. We can do layout view, which will allow us to make changes while the actual data from the report from the various fields are being displayed, or we can go into design view when we can only see the field definitions, but we can make a lot more changes. We get a lot more control basically in design view. So let's see how to do that. Again, we're not going to do it in this one because it's quite a cumbersome report. I might come back to it at a later stage, maybe in a bonus video. I'm thinking of making 2 bonus videos, and we might actually tidy this one up. But for now, I'm going to close this database down, and I'm going to open up the staff database, which we've worked on before, and there are 2 tables in it, courses and staff, and we're going to create our report not based on either of these tables. We're actually going to create a query. We don't have any queries at the moment, so we're going to create a new query, and then we're going to base our report on that. Because remember, I said at the start of the reports section, reports are more often than not based on based on queries. They're not based on tables, because the whole point of a query is to extract certain information from a table. You don't want the whole table, you only want certain records, and then you base a report on that. So again, the example I keep giving is somebody might come to you and say, I need a report on how many books we have from a certain author or a certain publisher, or I need a report based on how many students are doing a particular course or whatever. So more often than not all the time, but more often than not, you'll be doing reports based on queries. Now, we don't have a query, so we're going to have to create one. So this is good revision for doing queries as well. We'll make it a very simple query. I'm going to click on create, and I'm going to click on query design. We're staying away from the wizard. And the show table dialog box pops up, and we see that we can only base the query on one of these 2 tables, or we could base it on both the tables. And in fact, that's what we're going to do. So to select both the tables, courses is already selected for me. I'm going to hold down Control on my keyboard and left click once on staff, and that will then select staff, and courses will be left selected as well. So both of them are selected now. I can click on the add button, and now both tables are added to the query. So I'm going to click on close to close down the show table dialog box. And we can see I'm just moving these tables around. Excuse me. These are related tables. This is a one-to-many relationship, so one staff member can be involved in many courses. So we've seen how that works before. We can create queries based on multiple tables, and then we can include fields from both of those tables for each record when we run the query. And that's what we'll do now. That's always the next step when you're creating a query anyway. Even if you're only basing it on one table, you have to decide which fields you want to include when you run the query. We're going to include fields from both of these tables, and we won't include that many. For the staff, we'll include the following. We'll include title, and we'll include surname, and we'll include first name in that order. So it'll be like Mr. Jones John. Okay, that's the format it'll take. And then for courses, we'll just put down date, and we'll put down course. Great. So if I was to run the query now, I would get back basically, well, let's run it and see what happens. Yeah, I get back the following. I'm going to make just a small change in the criteria. I'm only going to look for courses after a certain date. So down here in the criteria row for the date column, the date field, I'm going to type in the following criteria: greater than or equal to. Now that's important because you might want to catch dates, courses on a specific date and not just after the date. You don't want to miss that date. I'm going to type in the 1st of the 1st, 2005. So if you see down here, I've typed in greater than equals 1st of the 1st, 2005, which means I'm only interested in courses after this date. So if I run it now, I get the following back, and I can see that Mr. Ian Chapman did this course, Mr. Anthony Myers did that course, Ms. Norma Parr did that course. All of them are after the 1st of the 1st, 2005. But again, because of the greater than or equals, the equal sign is important. If anybody had done a course on the 1st of the 1st, 2005, that would be in here as well. We wouldn't have missed out on that. Okay, now we need to save this query. So to save it, I can do anything I want. I can click here. We know, hopefully we know by now, there are many shortcuts. I'm just going to right click on the query tab and go to save, and I need to give it a name. Query 1 is not a very good name, so I'm going to call it something else. I'll call it completed courses query. So always try and give your objects meaningful names, and I'll click OK, and that's it. And you can now see that queries has appeared here, a query section, and completed courses query has also appeared here for me. Sometimes there's a little quirk in Access where when you save it, it still doesn't appear over here. If that happens, just close your query down and you should see it pop up over here. But it did for me, but just in case that happens to you, it happens to me sometimes. So it's just a little kind of glitch in Access. So I've closed down the query and I've opened it back up again. You can always run a query by double left clicking on it, and we can see the results here. And of course, if we were to add any more records which matched this criteria, whenever we'd run the query, we would see those new records. The query would update and it would take the most available information, or the most up-to-date information from the tables. Alright, so that's our query selected, or created should I say. I can close it down now because now I'm going to create a report based on this query. So I'm going to go to Create, and I'm going to go to Report Wizard. I'm going to use a wizard to do it. So it gives us more flexibility. Notice you can choose whether you're basing your report on tables or queries down here. It already has completed courses query, the query I just created. And you might be thinking, well, how did it know? Well, I've got it selected over here. You don't have to select your object over here, the object that you're basing your report on when you're doing it via Report Wizard. But if you do have it selected, Access very conveniently just selects it for you then automatically from this drop down arrow. But you can always select it yourself. If you had something else selected over here, you can always select the object that you do want to base the report on from this drop down arrow. But it's already selected for me because this was the last thing I had clicked on over here. Now we get to select the available fields that we want to be included in our report. I'm just going to include all of them. There aren't that many. Remember in the houses one there was 13 of them, so it was very, very complex looking, but there's only going to be 5 of them here, so this report should look a bit more human when we actually create it. I'll click on the next button, and because this is a related query, or the query is created using related tables, I'm being asked something here that it didn't ask me the last time. It's asking me, how do I want to view by data by staff, or how do you want to view your data by staff or by courses? And you can choose to view it either by staff or by courses. I'm going to view it by courses. Okay, so in other words, this is what I'm going to see: title, surname, first name, date, and course. If I did it by staff, you'll see that there's a kind of a grouping being done here: title, surname, first name, and then the 2 fields from the courses table would be date and course. But I'm going to view it by courses, and that's going to put everything all in one line for me, which is what I want. It's just going to make things a bit tidier in the report. So I click on Next, and now we're asked, do we want to add any grouping levels? I'm going to group by surname. So if I left click on surname and left click on the right arrow, you can see that surname will be how the records on this report are grouped. So the person's surname will be here, and then their title, first name, date, and the course that they're doing. And I'm also on the next screen now. There's nothing else to do here. On the next screen, I can choose how to sort. And I can sort it by any of these fields here: title, first name, date, and course. You'll notice that I can't sort it by surname, because that wouldn't make sense because we're grouping it by surname, but I can sort the fields under each grouped record by title, first name, date, or course. So I'm going to sort them by, let's see, it doesn't really matter. We'll sort it by date, okay? And we'll sort them in ascending order. Remember, ascending or descending are the only 2 options that you have. Notice there's no summary here. Okay, there's no summary button, and the reason there's no summary button is because there are no fields that can be summed. You can't, if I go back here, you can't add surnames, you can't get the average of surnames or title or first name or dates or courses. It wouldn't make sense. So that's why we have no summary button here. So again, this is going to make this report a lot less cluttered than the houses one. So we click on Next. Again, we could have stepped, block, or outline. I think I'll keep it with stepped because it's the default, and it's probably the one that you're going to be working with the most. Of course, we could as well change from orientation from portrait to landscape. I think I'll leave the portrait, I'll leave portrait orientation set because we're not going to be taking up that much space. We don't need landscape. We'll leave this box ticked. We'd normally leave this box ticked anyway. There are exceptions where you wouldn't, but we won't come across them during this course. So I'm going to click on Next, and that's it. What title do you want for your report? So I'm going to call it Courses. I'm just going to click here, since 2005 report. I usually like to add the word report into all of my reports. Okay, it's just a thing that I do. You don't need to though. But try and give your objects, as I keep saying, a meaningful name. We'll leave preview the report radio button ticked because we want to immediately preview the report when it's done. We'll click on finish. And that's it. We can see now we have a new report section over here, and we can see courses since 2005 report. That was the name I gave it. And here it is. Here's my report. It only comes out on one page. And we can see some problems though. We can see that we have the formatting again. The wizard has kind of made a bit of a pig's ear of the formatting. For a start, there's way too much space for the surname column, and obviously not enough space for the date. Remember from our Excel days, and from earlier reports that we did as well, when you see the following, when you see these, should we say, hash symbols or pound signs, I think they call them in the States, that's what you're going to see. You're going to see these symbols because the numbers can't be fit in the actual column. Way too much space as well for the Mr. or for the title column. Basically too much space for most of them. The course column is probably the one that we want to be the most wide, and in fact we can see that we're not fitting all of our information on it. We can see computer accounting 4 and so on and so forth. So we could have gotten around that by changing the layout to landscape, but we still don't have enough space, you can see, so you can't get around it that way. So we actually have to start making changes to the actual sizes of the actual field definitions themselves, okay, into which the data is being put. That's what we need to do. So that's what we're going to do in the next section. We'll just take a brief pause and get yourself together for the next section where we're actually going to start making changes to this report. This is a little bit fiddly, as I usually kind of give you advance warning. It's like a government health warning for things when they're about to get a bit fiddly. But again, it's not difficult. Just remember what we're doing, and the how to do it will then come. So I'll see you in the next section for how we actually start changing around the formatting and the layout of this. So we've got our report created using the report wizard, and this is what we have on the screen at the moment. Just like the report that we made for the houses database, the formatting is off. Okay, the formatting is off. The wizard doesn't get the formatting right all the time. Even when there's not as much information on the page as there was in the case of the houses database, we can still see that the formatting is off. So if you have a look at the column here, the surname column, there's far too much space for that. We don't need anywhere near as much space for that. The date title it looks like it's right aligned, and the dates themselves, when I click on each one you can see them, but then when I left click away, all we see are the hash symbols. So that means that the column is not wide enough to accommodate the dates. Tons of space, miles of space as well for the title column. We don't need anywhere near that much space because the titles Mr., Miss, and probably the longest title you might have would be Mrs. MRS. We don't have any, but that would probably be the longest one that we'd have. So we've far too much space for that. And we can see over here for the courses, they've been truncated, computer accounting 4, and so on and so forth. So we're going to look at how to actually fix this now. Because we need to fix it, because if you were to print this out to somebody, they wouldn't really be able to read a lot of the information. The dates, for instance, would not come out. So we need to be able to fix this information. And that's what we're going to do. So if I was to go to File and Print Preview now, this is what we'd see. This is what somebody would get on a sheet of paper. So that would be no good. So I'm going to close the Print Preview. And at the moment we're in Report View. So this is the view that somebody would see of the report when it's actually printed out. We're going to go to Layout View, which is the second one over from the right down here in the corner. And remember, in Layout View, it allows us to make changes to a report while the actual data is being displayed. Unlike Design View, which only shows us the field definitions, Layout View lets us make changes while the data is being displayed. So it's very, very good for us to be able to make changes and then see in real time how it affects the display of the data. So let's fix some things here. The first thing we're going to do is, let's see, the course field isn't large enough. We know that. So what we're going to do is we're going to make that bigger, but we're going to make some space, even though technically we don't need to have tons of space. But what we're going to do is we're going to move the date field. So moving a field is very, very easy. Now don't forget, these are your fields, okay? Anything that data goes into is a field. If you hover your mouse over the center of any field, that's selected. If I left click on one date field, they're all selected. If I left click on one title field, they're all selected. So left click on any date field and hover your mouse in the middle of any of them at all. I'm going to hold down my mouse button and I'm going to drag my mouse to the left. And as you can see, we can move now. Unfortunately, it doesn't give you a little preview, like a little ghost outline to let you know where, which is, I think, an oversight, design oversight on the part of Microsoft here. Maybe they'll improve it in subsequent versions, but they really should give you an idea of where it's going to drop, but they don't. So you left click and you just drag until you're happy enough with, just going to drag it a little bit over like that, just to make some space. And notice that they all moved. So when you move one, all of them move. So you don't need to move each one individually. If you were thinking, God, I'm going to be here forever moving all of these around, you're not. All of them move because one of them, it's not that they're connected, but Access knows that if you click on one to move it, that you're going to want to move all of them. And there is a way of moving ones individually as well if you need to fine tune it, but that's the default behavior. So that's all there is to actually moving it. And then when you're happy, you release the mouse button. Now what we're going to do is we're going to enlarge the course field. And here's our course column, and if I left click again on any of the fields with the course name in it, they're all selected. So here's my 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 records. So how do we resize a field? Well, the same way that we always resize fields or objects or shapes. We don't have sizing handles like we would normally do with shapes and sizes, but the principle is the same. We can resize. If you can see here, I'm hovering over the edge and I have a double-headed arrow. I'm hovering over the top and the bottom, and you can also hover over. Now we're not going to do this from the bottom, from you know, to kind of drag it down to make it wider and longer as well, or wider and yeah, longer, taller if you like. I'm just going to do it from this side, and I'm going to left click, and again when I do one, they're all going to be done. Now this time we do get a little preview. So if I left click, yeah, roughly around there. Now it's still not enough, so I want to go another little bit. That's still not enough, and another little bit, and that's a little bit better. How to get over a nervous breakdown, so clearly that we're missing something here. If I move them over any more, you're going to be kind of very close to, I'm not happy with the first name here, this needs to be moved over as well. So again, I'm going to left click on the first name, and I'm going to move them over like this. Notice that the first name fields are all quite large as well. They really don't need to be that large. So I'm going to, again, left click, and I'm going to drag them like this. Perfect. Perfect. And now I can afford to move these over another little bit, like that. Okay, so we're getting somewhere now. So what else do we need to do? Well, we need to alter the width of our date columns, because I can't read the dates. So I'm going to hover my mouse over the right hand. I could do it from here as well, but I'm going to, actually, yeah, I will do it from the left. I'm going to left click and drag out a little bit, and that's it. That's perfect. Now what I want to do is I want to align my dates within their respective fields. So we do that by clicking on Format, and I'm going to make sure that they're selected, and I'm just going to left align them. So we could left align, center align, or right align. I'm going to left align them. Just because I can. There's no particular reason or design reason. I'm just going to do it just to show you that you can do it. And you could center align or right align or left align any data within its field. Similarly for date is, it's still not great. I'm going to make it a little bit bigger. I'm going to left align it like this, and then I'm going to drag this back like this. So we're getting somewhere here. Now first name is all the way over here now. That's because I moved these back. So what I need to do is I need to move this over here like this roughly. So as you can see, it's just a question of fine tuning. The first name field doesn't need to be that big, because that's only these and these fields here are not affected by this. This is its own. This is as wide as this is ever going to be first name. There's never going to be anything else in this. So I can make it nice and narrow like that. And then what I can do is I can move course over here like this, and so on and so forth. So now we're looking much better. If I go to File and Print Preview, this is now something that I could easily hand over to somebody, and they could immediately see what, I was going to say student, what employee is doing what course and on what date it was done. So we know that Anthony Myers now did. Have a look at this. Don't forget, these are being grouped. Okay, so these are being grouped by surname. and they're being sorted in ascending order date. So we know that Mr. Anthony Myers did these 2 courses, we know that Miss Norma Parr did these 2 courses, and so on and so forth. So I'm going to close this, and I'm going to save the changes I've made, and you can do that by holding down Control and S, or clicking on the Save button, or you could right click and go to Save, and we know all of the ways now of saving. So that's pretty much it. That's pretty much it for changing it in layout view. Don't forget, in layout view, it's easier to do it because in terms of getting a sense of how it's going to affect the data, because we can see the data in here. There's certain things that we can't do though, however, and we can only do certain kind of fine-tuned granular changes in design view. So in the next section, I'm going to show you how to make much more fine-tuned changes and much more specific changes using design view. Okay, in the previous section we looked at making changes to our report in layout view. Now we're going to move into design view. And the reason we're moving into design view is because there's a lot more stuff we can do in design view as opposed to layout view. Remember, in layout view, it's very useful because we can make changes to the layout of the report while the data is being displayed in exactly the same way that we did in layout view for forms. We can see the data, and it's very useful because when we resize stuff we can see, well, is it wide enough? Can I still read the stuff? But there are certain things that we can't do in layout view that we can do in design view. So I'm going to change over to design view now. Oh, by the way, just an addendum here. I'm hovering my mouse over the fields here, and I'm always saying that it's turning into a double-headed arrow. You may not be seeing that on your screen. You may just be seeing a white pointer. The pointer may not be changing at all, and you might be wondering, well, why is James saying that it's turning into a double-headed arrow or a four-headed arrow like I can see now when I'm ready to move it? The reason is because of the screen capturing software that I'm using. It's rendering the pointer just the same. So you will be seeing those double-headed and four-headed arrows on your own computer. It's just there's a good chance you may not be seeing it in these videos, and I just wanted to explain why that is. It's just because of it's a feature of the screen capturing software, the screen recording software that I'm using. Alright, so I'm going to go into design view for this particular report. Now, we can do that by left clicking down here. We have our 4 views for the report. Here's report view, in other words, what people will see. Here's print preview. That's going to look when it's printed. Here's layout view, which is what we're currently in. And now here's design view. Now remember, we did design view in forms, and it looked a bit when we went into it. This is going to look equally when we go into it, so don't panic. It's going to look even less readable. Reports look less readable than forms did, because at least in forms, in the detail section, we could actually see the form. We can't here. We can't see the details of our report. So I'm going to explain why that is. I'm going to go through each of these sections here and explain exactly what they are and why they look the way they do. And I'm going to swap between layout view and design view in order to do that. So the first section here that we'll look at in design view is known as the report header. And what's a report header? Let's go back to layout view. This is the report header, this section up here. The report header appears at the very top of your report, at the very top of page 1 of your report. We only have 1 page in this report, but if we had 50 pages, 100 pages, it would appear at the very top of the first page, but no other page. All right, so it's only at the top of the first page, and that's why it's called the report header, because it comes at the head of the report. Notice that when we went into design view, we had a report header and footer automatically. In form design view, we didn't. We had to add our own header and footer. But when you create a report using the report wizard, you automatically get a header and a footer, and certain things are put in there automatically for you. So some of the work is done for you. So that's the report header. It comes at the head or the top of page 1 of your report. Let's go back to the next section here then, and we see the surname and so on and so forth. What is that? That's our page header. So at the head of every page, at the top of every page of your report, not just page 1, but all 50 or 100 pages or however many number of pages you have. In this particular report, we're going to have surname, date, title, and so on. This makes sense because we want this, and this at the top of every page of the report. It's very similar to, if you remember in Excel, we had repeating rows, where we wanted to repeat certain rows at the top of each worksheet when we printed it out to make it easier to read data from our spreadsheet when we were looking at a printout, because you may have like dozens and dozens of records or rows, or in the case of Excel, rows again printed on the same page, and then you're scrambling back to page 1 to remember, well, hang on a second, is that a PPS number? Is that column a first name field? Is it a telephone number? What's that date represented? Is it a date of birth? Is it a date of commencement of employment or whatever, or enrollment in a course? That's why it's nice to have these and pretty vital to have these at the top of every page of your report, because your report could go on for multiple pages. So you don't want somebody having to scramble back to the first page to see what field or what column, what's the title of that column. So that is the page header. Now, don't forget the difference between the report header. The report header only comes at the top of the report. The page header comes at the top of every page. So that's important. The next section we have is called a surname header. You're not always going to have this section. The only reason we have this section in this report is because we're using grouping. Remember, when we created this report using the report wizard, we specified that we wanted to group by surname. So these are the surname fields, and every record belonging to that surname is then grouped together. And then we sorted them by date. So Ian Chapman only has one, but everybody else has 2 or 3. That's grouping. So if you're not using grouping, you're not going to see, it's called surname header here because we're grouping it by surname, but it'll be called whatever header, whatever you're grouping it by. But if you're not grouping, you're not going to see this section here. So your report will be a little bit easier to follow the first time that you're doing these things. But once you know what they are, that's all they are. Now we didn't look at multiple levels of grouping, but you'd have other headers then from other levels of grouping. But we only have surname header, and that's because we're grouping by surname. So this is our surname header. We only have the surname and then nothing else on the row. Back to design view, the surname and nothing else on the row. So that's what that section is. Then we have the all-important details section. Now remember, in forms we had the details section. We could actually see the form. The details section of the form was where the fields were actually, that's where the data is actually put in, and in the forms we could actually see it. The details section of report is exactly the same. In these field definitions here, the data is pulled from each record, and these fields are then populated with that data. But we can't see every single, it wouldn't make sense for Access to show all of the details for every single entry in the report, because your design view would just go on and on and on forever. So think of these as kind of placeholders. And for every record, the relevant details are going to be put in for date, title, first name, and course, and so on. And for all of these as well, and certainly for the details section as well. Because remember, a form only shows you one record at a time, but the report is going to show all the records. So that's why you're not seeing, we have, I can't remember how many records we have in this, but I think let's say it's 10. That's why we're not seeing 10 dates, 10 titles, 10 first names. You only need to see them once, and then the report is going to fill them out however many times it needs to be filled out. So the detail section, exactly the same as the form. Its purpose is the same. It's where the details of the report go, but we only see one box for each field that's being included. Then we have a page footer, and the page footer is this bit here. The page footer, you can see that it automatically put in today's date for me, which is literally today, Friday, April 24th, 2020, and page 1 of 1. This looks a bit weird. It doesn't have the date here. It has a little function called now equals now. And that's a function that's built into Access, which always returns the current date and time from the system, from the computer. And then equals, and this really weird, you may remember these from when we were doing headers and footers in Excel, the ampersands. These are kind of operators that specify, they're kind of placeholders. So this means page 1 of 1, or page 1 of 2, basically page X of Y, whatever page you're on and however many number of pages your report is. And the end result there, you don't really need to be able to read this, don't worry about it. The end result is simply page 1 of 1, page 1 of 2, page 2 of 2, whatever it is. So that's what we have down here in our report footer. In our page footer. That's your page footer. The very end is your report footer, which is this section here. And if we go back to report footer, do we have a report footer? We don't actually have a report footer. No, we don't. Let's ignore this section down here. We can drag it down, and I think we might be doing that, but at the moment there's no footer placed in. There's only, and when I say report footer now, I mean something that's going to be at the very end of the last page of the report. That isn't put in for you. There's a report header put in, but not a report footer. Don't forget the difference between the page footer and the report footer. The page footer is going to appear at the end of every page. The report footer would only appear at the end of the last page. Similarly with the report header, that only appears at the top of the first page of the report, whereas the page header appears at the top of every page in the report. Now, that's enough talking about that, but I did want to explain it to you. And again, we have our grids. Let's actually move some stuff around now, maybe delete some stuff as well. So I'm going to select the title field in the detail area. So be careful when you're doing this in the exam. If they ask you to select a field in a particular section, don't get confused. Make sure that you're selecting it. For instance, this is not in the detail section. This is not the title in the detail section. This is the title in the detail section. So I'm going to select that and I'm going to delete it. And we delete a field definition simply by selecting it as I've done and pressing the delete key. That's it. It's gone. Let's have a look at how that's changed in our layout view. Well, our titles, all of our titles are gone, but our title in the page header is still there. So that's important. So we need to remove that as well. I'm going to go back to design view. And what I'm going to do is delete it from the page header as well. So I'm going to delete from the page header too. And that's it. So now if I go back to layout view, you can see that it's gone from the page header, and I've already deleted it from the detail view. Wonderful. So now I can move things around a little bit now. What I'm going to do is move the first name in the page header back over like this. Let's go back to layout view. Now that's only in the page header move. Now I need to move these over as well so that they line up with it. So back to design view we go. Left click on the detail field name for first name and move that back. Let's go back to layout view. Yeah, that's fine. And now we can move over course as well. So I'm going to move over course. Notice that I'm hovering my mouse over the line itself like this, move it back like that, and then move course in the detail section as well, because if you don't move both of them, as you saw there a second ago with the first name, they're going to be out of line. So let's go back to layout view. Let's have a look at that. Yeah, that looks okay. I mean, you could disappear down the rabbit hole with this, and I could do some more fine tuning, but I think you get the idea. It's simply moving stuff around. But don't forget, if you move something in the page header, you'll almost certainly have to move it in the detail section as well to line it up. Okay, one is not going to move with the other, and that's important to realize. Now we're going to, let's see. We're going to click in the report header and we're going to change the title to recent courses. So we need to be able to do that, and we can do that here in design view. I can left click once up here and I can delete what's there, and I'm going to type in recent courses and left click away from it. Don't press enter, just left click away from it. Go back to layout view and there you go. Now, I'm going to go back to design view again, and this time, as we saw, there is no report footer. Well, there is, technically there is, but it's just blank, there's nothing in it. I'm going to drag it down. I'm going to hover my mouse over the line down here, and I'm going to left click and drag down like this to create a footer roughly this big. Roughly this big. Now remember when we did this in forms, we were putting in a label in our form in design view. We can do exactly the same thing here, exactly the same thing. We're going to click on the design tab. We have controls up here. I'm going to click on label. I'm going to left click once on label. And where do you put it? In the footer? Anywhere you want. Absolutely anywhere you want. I'll do it on the left hand side. I'm going to left click and drag, and I'm going to type in my name. And then I'm going to left click away from it. That's it. Now I want to make this a little bit more easy to see. So I'm going to left click once again on the label box. I'm going to click on format, and I'm going to click bold, and I'm going to make the name red, and I'll make it stand out a little bit. Ideally, stuff in the footer should be small. It shouldn't be too big. But I'm just going to make it a little bit bigger just so you can see it, and just resize the box a bit. Now let's have a look at that in layout view. So there we go. That's going to be at the bottom of the report. Okay, the bottom of the report. So that's pretty much it. There's lots of other things we could put in, but we're not going to put them in. But again, there's images, there's links, and so on and so forth. But we don't need to look at all that stuff. Those are the only things that you'll possibly be asked to do in the exam. So that's all that we're covering. Just practice changing around stuff in design view. Get used to the whole concept of changing things around in design view and deleting things and then matching stuff up. Again, most of the questions in ECDL exams we know are short because they have to be short, because there simply isn't time to do very lengthy questions. But it's nice to be able to identify exactly what you do need to do and jump in there and get it done as fast as you can, because time is always of the essence. So that's it. That's all we look at for making changes in design view. In the next section, what we're going to do is we're almost finished reports, in fact, and we're almost finished the module. In fact, we're almost finished the course, the entire ECDL course, because we've only got about 4 pages left to go on this. So in the next section, we're going to look at how to do what is known as other calculations in reports. We've already seen how to sum and average and min and max. We're going to look at how to do another calculation in reports as well. And we'll probably go back to the houses database for that. So I'll see you in the next section for other calculations in reports. Now in this section we're going to look at how to do other calculations in reports. We've already seen how to do some calculations. We saw how to add a summary in the report wizard where we could look at things like sum, average, min and max. But we can do other calculations as well, and we can add those calculations to a report after the wizard is complete. So in other words, we don't do it during the wizard, the report wizard, we do it after the fact. And what it involves is adding a text box to our report. And we've seen text boxes already in Microsoft Word, and we saw a similar concept with labels in the form header and in the report header as well, and in the footers as well. So it just involves drawing a text box and then putting the calculation into the text box. Now the positioning of the box is very important, especially if you're going to be doing it in a grouped report. This is very similar to Excel, where all calculations or formulas have to begin with an equal sign, and all field names have to be contained in square brackets. We'll see how this works now. I'm going to open up the houses database, which is here, and we can see the grouped houses report. If I double left click on it again, now we didn't do any tidying up with this at all. We saw that it was quite messy. I might at the end of this section actually just go back in here and tidy it up, but I think in the previous video hopefully you might have seen exactly how you can tidy things up in a report in layout view and in design view as well. So I'm not going to do that right now, but what I am going to do is I'm going to add some more calculations to this. I'm going to click on design view to do it. We do it in design view, and we know that we have a header, a group header, we have a page header, we have a report header, we have a page header, and we also have, now remember in the previous example it was called a surname header. This time it's called a town header because that's how we're grouping the records in this report. If I go back to layout view, we can see that all of the properties are grouped together by town. Okay, so that's important. So what we want to do is we want to basically count the number of properties in each town. If you recall from our Microsoft Excel days, there was a formula called count. Sorry, a function, in fact. It was built in, so it's a function called count. And there's a very similar, identical function, in fact, in Access, which allows us to count the number of, in this case, records in a particular grouping. So what we want to do in this report is we want to count the number of properties in each town. So here's how we do it. We're going to go down to the town footer that begins summary 4. And you'll see it here. This is in the town footer, okay, which means that in the footing of each town, if I go back here to the layout view, in the footing of each town we have this box here that was created for us. So at the bottom of each grouping of properties, grouped by town, we have a footer called summary for town equals Aspatria, summary for town equals Cleaton Moor, and so on and so forth. So back in design view, what we're going to do is we're going to select a text box in the town footer that begins with summary. This is the text box that contains it. And we're going to delete what's in there. All right, we're going to delete all of this horrible looking stuff because there's stuff in there that we haven't looked at, like ifs and stuff. So we're going to delete that. I'm sorry, I need to select the whole thing and I need to delete it. All right, now I'm just going to show you exactly from scratch exactly how we're going to do this. I'm going to increase the size of the footer first of all, and I'm going to do this by hovering my mouse over the bottom of the footer, and I'm going to make it just a little bit bigger. So what I do is I hover my mouse in the bottom right hand corner and I drag it down. Now it's going to overlap the sum, average, but we'll get to that in a second, okay? And I'm going to draw a text box in here in the in the town footer. I'm going to draw a text box. Now how do we do that? Well, we have to click on the design tab and we need to put a text box in there. Now, where's the text box? Well, you see the text box. It's not a label, it's a text box. There is a difference. We only put text into labels, but in a text box we can actually put in calculations. So I'm going to left click once on text box, and I'm going to draw it down here. It says unbound at the moment because there's nothing in there. We haven't actually drawn the text box, so it's not bound to anything. It doesn't matter particularly where you put it at the moment, because we can always move it around, but I'm going to put it in the left hand side of the town footer, and I'm going to click and drag roughly like that, and then I'm going to release it. Now I'm going to move it over slightly, and you'll have seen I got a field, but I also got an accompanying label with it. This is going to be important because we don't just want to see figures at the bottom of each town grouping. We also want to see a label beside it telling us what that figure represents. So we have a label and we have an unbound box. So here's our label and here's our unbound box. And in the following, I'm going to enter the following information. For a label, I'm just going to make it a little bit bigger, and I'm going to say number of properties, like that. And it got as big as it needed to get in order to accommodate that. So I've typed in number of properties for a label, and now in unbound I'm going to put the calculation in the actual unbound box, in the text box itself. So I'm going to left click in it twice, and I'm going to type in the following: equals count. That's the name of our function, which is going to count the number of properties in each town. And then I open a round bracket, which is, so far it's very similar to Excel, but here's where it gets slightly different. What I want to do is I want to count the number of addresses. So it's the address, this here, that I'm counting, because I want to count the number of properties in each town. So I have to put the field names in square brackets. The field names have to be contained in square brackets. And you'll find the square bracket beside the letter P on your keyboard. It's the keys with the chain brackets, sometimes called the curly brackets. I call them chain brackets. And at the bottom symbol on that is the square bracket. So we don't need to hold down Shift because it's the bottom symbol on the keyboard. So I type in the square bracket and I type in the name of the field that I want to count. Then I close the square bracket because I opened one up, and I also opened up a round bracket, which means I need to close the round bracket as well. And that's it. That's all there is to it. So let's left click away from that. I'm just going to make this a bit bigger so we can see it. I typed in for a label number of properties. I'm going to do this again from scratch, but we'll keep going as we are now. I typed in number of properties. I could have typed in anything here. I could have typed in amount of properties or just properties. But it's always a good idea to type in a sensible label so that when you see the number beside it, you know exactly what the number represents. And then I typed in the following: equals, you have to type in equals, count, and then in round brackets, and then in square brackets within those round brackets, the name of the field that you're counting, that you want to get a count of. So that's it. Now let's go back to layout view and see how it's done that. So number of properties, 1, which makes sense. There's one property in Cleaton Moor. Aspatria, there's one property in Aspatria. Cockermouth, number of properties, 5. Number of properties in Dislington, 1, and so on and so forth. Number of properties, I think Maryport had a few of them as well, didn't it? Yeah, if I go down to Maryport, number of properties, 7. Number of properties in High Seaton, 1, and so on and so forth. That's all there is to it. That's all we've done. Now back in design view, you can see that the number of properties, the town footer box is kind of overlapping the sum. So that's just a formatting problem. You can see it here if I click on number of properties again. What I would have to do here, now I'm not going to do it because it's just a formatting and layout problem. It's much more important that you're able to understand what exactly that we did. Let's add another one. Okay, let's add another one. Let's this time sum up. Let's see, we'll sum up the prices. So we're going to make the town footer deeper than it currently is. So how would we do that? Well, it's easy enough to do. We click on the page footer underneath town footer and we drag it down like this. Okay, we drag it down just to make it a bit deeper because we don't have enough space at the moment to put in our second text box. And I'm going to add another text box to the town footer. Exactly the same sequence of steps. I click on design and I click on text box, which is over here. And then I bring my mouse into the town footer and I click and drag roughly where I want to. You can always reposition these later. So there it is. So remember, when you draw a text box, you're going to get two boxes. You're going to get the text box itself, which will say unbound at the beginning, because that means it's not bound to anything. We haven't got anything in there, like any calculations or anything, although we will in a second. And we also have a label for it. So what will we type in for the label? Well, I'm just going to make it a bit bigger, and I'm going to type in sum of price. Sum of price. Now, it's overlapping my text box, but we'll fix that in a second. I'm going to show you how to fix that shortly in a second. So now let's type in our calculation here. So it's equals, again, these always have to begin with an equal sign, and just like Excel, we can type in sum. Sum. And I'm going to open a round bracket, and remember, the field that you're adding always has to be in square brackets. So I'm going to type in a square bracket, and now this time I want to add in, I'm going to be adding in the price field. So I'm going to type in price. Close off my square bracket because I opened one up. Close off my round bracket again because I opened one up. And that's it. Left click out of it. So now let's have a look at that in layout view. It's going to look messy, but the information is going to be correct. Go back to layout view, and we can see sum of price 8,500. Okay, there's one property in Cleaton Moor, and it's 8,500. Sum of price for Aspatria, there's only one property there, that's 39,000. Let's go to one which has a few of them. Here we go. Conkermouth has 5 properties, and the sum total of those is 165,700. So that's all of these added up. All of these prices added up. Now, of course, we can't see the prices. You might be wondering, you might be saying, well, it's the same thing, but it's just us doing it after the fact. It's us actually putting it in after the fact. I'm going to go back to design view and just move some stuff around here. Moving price, moving occupied. I'm going to make price a bit wider here. Very, very little room here, really, to be honest. I'm going to go back into layout view. It's a little bit better, but you can still see. Basically, what I've done here is I've just added up all of these. Okay, I've added up all of these. So now you might be thinking, well, this figure is the same as this figure. It's just another way of doing it. Okay, it's another way of doing it. It's doing it after the fact. Okay, that's pretty fiddly. It's pretty, it's pretty complicated. So I'm going to go back from scratch and I'm going to do it again. I'm going to close down the grouped houses by report, and I'm not going to change it. So rather than just deleting everything piecemeal individually, I'm just going to go back to scratch. I'm going to open up the grouped houses report again, and now back to the way I was. If I click on design view, you'll see that there is nothing in the town footer other than what's already there. So remember, the town footer is what we have at the bottom of each grouping of properties per town. And this is the town footer here. All right, town footer here, town footer, and so on. So I'm just putting in some extra information. What I want to do is I'm going to do exactly the same thing again. I'm going to put in 2 text boxes, and I'm going to add up the number of properties in each town, and I'm going to sum up the price of all the properties in each town, which is already done in the sum box here, but this is another way of doing it after the fact. So let's do that again. So we click on design view, and what we do is we go to the town footer box, and this time I'll make the town footer box a bit wider before I put anything else in, so it's not getting in the way. So I do that by clicking on the page footer underneath it, and I click and drag down to make it to make the town footer taller. You're clicking on the footer underneath the town footer, the page footer, to make it wider. You're not clicking on town footer, because that would make the detail section taller. So now what I need to do is go to design, and I need to click on not label, because that's just a text label, a text box. It's this one here. The tooltip will always pop up and tell you. So I click once on text box, and I drag my mouse down here, and I click and drag, and I get 2 boxes. I get an unbound text box, and I get a label for the text box. In the label, what I'll do is type in number of properties. Number of properties. Now you can see I've intentionally done this because in very, very shortly now I'm going to be showing you how to move these 2 boxes individually. You'll notice that when you move one, the other one moves with it, which is not what we want. But I've done that intentionally because I'm going to show you shortly how to move these 2 boxes individually. So number of properties, it's overlapping. I'm not going to be able to see all of this label, but I'll fix this. Just for now, know that I've typed in number of properties for a label. Then in the unbound box, I need to type in my calculation. So I'm going to hit my equal sign, unbound disappears, and I type in the name of the function that I want to use. And I want to type in count. And then in round brackets, first of all, followed by an opening square bracket, I type in the name of the field that I'm counting. And I'm counting the number of records or number of fields for address. So I type in address. You could count any of these, but we're counting the addresses because we want to count how many properties there are. Close the square bracket, close the round bracket. Left click out of the entire report. Let's go back into layout view, and we can see number of now there's our problem I was telling you about. We can only see PRO in the beginning of the P, but we'll fix that shortly. The important thing to note is that the number is correct. It's counting one property for Aspatria, one property for Cleeton Moor, 5 for Cockermouth, and so on and so forth. So we know that works. And now I'm going to put in my second text box where I sum up basically all of the properties that are in each town. This has already been done in the sum box, but this is just another way of doing it. So how do we do it? Well, we go back to the design tab. Again, we click on text box, not label, but text box. Click and drag like this, and we get the following. Now again, we get two boxes. We get an unbound text box, and we get a label that we can put in it. I'm going to make it a little bit bigger. Probably still won't have enough space, but that's okay because we'll sum of, let's say, house prices. Okay, now again, sum of house price. Not enough space, we will fix it. That's the label. In the unbound box, we type in the calculation. So this time we're going to type in equals, has to begin with an equal sign, sum, the name of our function. We open a round bracket, and then in a square bracket, we type in the name of the fields that we want to perform the calculation on. In this case, we're going to be calculating the price. So it's the price field that we're adding. So we type in price. Close the square bracket, close the round bracket. That's it. Left click away from it, and then go back to layout view, and we can see that for each properties or number of properties in each town, the sum of all those properties is added. It's 39,000 for Aspatria because there's only one house there that costs 39,000. Cleeton Moor, the sum is 8,500 because there's only one house there that costs 8,500. In Cockermouth, we have all of these, and we can't see the prices because the price field, price column wasn't wide enough, but all of these add up to 167,500. And if I make the sum field a bit bigger, because that figure is in there already, you can see this and this are the same. So that's it. That's all there is to doing other calculations in reports. Now, what I'm going to show you very quickly in the next section is how to fix this problem that I had in design view, where I didn't leave enough space for the label. And you might think, well, I'm just going to move the text box over and I'll have enough space then to resize it. But you'll notice that when you do that, the label moves with it. That's supposed to happen. But I'm now going to show you how to individually move these boxes around so that you can resize them. Now I'm just going to show you very quickly how to move these boxes around individually. In the previous section we saw that we didn't have enough space for our labels, number of properties, sum of house price. If I go back into layout view, you can see this looks awful because I can't see all of the label. Now it's not a big deal, the data is still correct, but in terms of formatting it's not great. The problem is that we saw that when we went to move these boxes, if I go to move the sum price text box, the label moves with it. Similarly for the count address box, the label moves with it. And if I try and move the label on its own, the other one moves with it as well, the text box moves with it. That's supposed to happen because they are bound together. So what we need to be able to do is move the boxes individually. It's actually quite easy to do. When you click on a box, you'll notice that you have your normal sizing handles, but up in the top right hand corner of each of these boxes, you'll also see a grey square. And if I left click on that grey square, I can then move the boxes individually. So you can see what I'm doing here. I'm moving the boxes individually. Similarly for here, this moves and its accompanying text box doesn't move with it. So I can move the labels around, but you have to click on that box, that grey box or grey square in the top left hand corner of the particular label or text box. So that's all there is to that. So if we go back to layout view now, we can see now that it's much better. We can see number of properties and sum of house prices. That's it. Reports, again, you can disappear down the rabbit hole with them, and you can spend an awful lot of time fiddling and piddling around with the various column widths and so on and so forth. They do take a bit of work. Reports take a bit of work. You can't just kind of bang them out really, because the data will be there, it'll be correct, but they need a bit of work in terms of formatting and preparation, especially when you're going to be printing them out, which you will be most of the time, and giving them to somebody. But that's all we need to look at now for other calculations and reports. In the next section, what we're going to do is printing from a report. And then we're going to look at deleting a report, which is very, very easy. It's almost exactly the same, in fact, as deleting any other object from here. So you probably know how to do that already. But first of all, we need to look at printing from a report. And then we're going to look at how to export our data. And then that's it, we're done. So I'll see you in the next section for printing from a report. Okay everyone, we're coming to the end of section 8 reports. We just have a couple of other small things left to look at, and in this section we're going to look at printing from a report. Because a lot of the time you're going to want to print a report. That's kind of the whole point of reports. They're not really supposed to be looked at on the screen, although you can do that, but most of the time somebody is going to want a report printed off. They're going to say to you, give me a hard copy of this report. And what they mean by that is simply print out the report that you've created in Access. So that's kind of the whole point of them. Once a report is completed, the view becomes print preview. I'm in print preview here. And we can go to it at any stage by clicking on File and Print Preview. And we can get up the print preview. So this is how the report will look when it's printed. And I can navigate through the various different pages down here as you normally would, like this. Now we're going to pretend that this is better than it actually looks. There's still a lot of problems with the formatting and stuff, but we won't worry too much about that. We're just going to look at the printing options that Access offers. The good news is most of this stuff is going to be familiar to you from Word and from Excel. We're going to be looking at things like changing page setups, page sizes and margins and so on and so forth. So none of it is particularly new. Okay, let's do the first section. We'll do the page setup. So I'm on the print preview tab and I'm going to click on page setup, and the page setup dialog box will appear. And it's got 3 tabs: print options, page and columns. We can ignore the columns. The margins are currently set to 6.35 and they're in millimeters. And that means that's the amount of space, if you can recall from Word, it's the amount of space that you have around the sides and the top and bottom of your pages. It's currently set to 6.35 millimeters. And the values shown are for what we would call a narrow margin. If you remember narrow margins from Word, it was that the margins were quite narrow, but that meant that you had more space on your page for the actual content. We're going to make the margins 15. So I'm typing in 15 and I'm tabbing down 15, 15, 15. So I'm changing all margins to 15. Now changing margins can cause sometimes unintended results. Reports or forms can overflow horizontally if you increase the size of your margins or decrease the size of your margins, and you could end up doubling the number of pages in your print. We've seen that before in Word and so on. So sometimes when you change margins you might need to move other things around. Again, this ties in with what I was saying, that preparing reports for printing, it can be a lot of work in it. So I'm going to click OK. And you can see that the margins have become a lot wider, and that means now that I've got less space available on the page. And it's probably gone on to more pages now, and it has. So I'm going to go back to the first page. That's just the consequence of making my margins wider. They were narrow at 6.35, and now I've made it wide. You remember narrow margins and wide margins in Word as well. So it's the same thing. So let's left click on the page setup button again in the page layout group. I'm on the print preview tab. And this time I'm going to click on the page tab. And here's where we can change things like the portrait of our page. The orientation of our page. We can set it to portrait or landscape. This is currently set to landscape. I could of course change it to portrait or landscape by clicking on the appropriate circle or radio button, as they're called. That's all there is to that. And then we might want to change the size of the page. We might be printing onto smaller paper or larger paper. Now, of course, you need to make sure that you actually have that paper in the printer and that your printer is capable of printing to, let's say, A3, which would be twice the size of A4. Or that you have, if you had A5, which would be half the size of A4. The bigger the number that you're having, the paper size as you go up, that you actually have A5 paper in. But that's what we can do. We can select a paper size, and there are tons and tons of different paper sizes. We'll leave it set to A4, and we leave the source set to automatically select as well. You can also choose the default printer, or you can use a specific printer. Now, this would really only be available in an office where you might have multiple printers attached to a network. So if a particular printer was offline, if your default printer was offline, or if it was very busy and you didn't want to have to wait, you could choose another specific printer, and you could choose that printer then by clicking on the printer button. But we don't need to worry too much about that, so we won't actually go into it. We're not printing anyway, and you're not required to print in order to actually complete any of the questions in the exam. So I'll click on cancel. We can also choose margins up here from the page size group. We can left click and we can go to normal, or we can go to wide, or we could go to narrow. That's a classic example of a question that you might be asked. Change the margins for this report. They might give you a report and you might need to change it to wide. That's how you do it. You make sure that you're in print preview, you go up to margins and you click on wide. And I'm going to change it back to narrow now. So I'm back to narrow now. That's all there is to that. Let's see, what else do we need to do? Well, we need to be able to print multiple copies. So if I click on print, I get up the print dialog box. You can get it by clicking on file and print as well. And the print dialog box simply asks you, again, we could choose a different printer here if we wanted to. So there are always multiple ways of doing the same thing in Access in most applications in Office. I could choose the number of copies. This is I can't remember how many pages it is actually. Let's see. I'm going to click on the last page. It's 7 pages now because I've gone back down from a wide margin to a narrow margin, so it's greatly reduced the number of pages. So now I have only 7 pages. So if I wanted to print, let's say, 5 copies of this, hopefully by now you can click on the spinners, or you can type in a number directly as I have just there, 5, and that would give me 5 copies of this 7-page report. I could also print all the ranges or the entire range of pages, in other words, all 7 pages. That's the default. Or if you wanted to print certain pages, I could print from, let's say, pages 2 to 4. So I've literally just typed in 2, I've tabbed across to 4, and that's all there is to that. When I'm happy with all of this, we won't look at any selected records. We don't need to worry about that in reports. It's grayed out, in fact, by default, because all of the records are included in a report, or because all of the records are coming from either a table or a query. What I could do is then I could click OK, and I would get 5 pages of only pages 2 to 4, and that's all there is to that. So I'm going to click on cancel now to cancel out of that, and that's pretty much it. That's pretty much all we need to know about printing from Access, printing a report from Access. So I'm going to click on close print preview, and in this section of the video I'm also going to double down, as I did in the last section as well with forms, deleting a report. Very, very easy to do. All I do is I left click on the object that I want, and I have multiple ways of deleting it. I can right click and I can select delete from the menu which appears. I can left click on the object to select it, click on the home tab and click on not the delete down arrow but the actual delete button, and that will delete this current item that I have selected. Or I could left click on the object to select it and press the delete key. All of those in this particular instance are going to reduce this dialog box, because remember, you cannot delete an object while it's open. The grouped houses report is open, which means I can't delete it. So I'll have to click OK, and then I would have to, close it down like that, and then what I can do is delete it. Now it says, do you want to permanently delete it? Don't forget, if I clicked yes, I wouldn't be able to undo the deletion. I couldn't get it back even by clicking undo. There's no recycle bin. It just gets deleted completely. I'm actually going to click no now, because I may want to come back to this in a future supplemental video or bonus video. So I'm going to keep it there. So that's all there is to printing from a report and deleting a report. The very last thing that we need to do in this section is known as exporting data. And we're going to see how to do that in the last section. It should only take about 10 minutes. In the very last part of this video, we're going to look at how to export data from Access. We've already seen how reports can be used to provide what will normally be a hard copy, a printed copy of information. Rather than somebody coming along and reading the report off your screen, you're actually going to print the report for them. But we can also produce other forms of output from Access, and we can export that data in a particular format. For instance, a table or a query can be exported in spreadsheet form. Because tables are tables, or text or XML format, something called XML format for viewing on the web. So we're going to see just a couple of brief examples of how to do this. Again, we don't jump into too much detail in ECDL, but just to give you an idea of how it works. So I'm going to open up the CIA database, which is currently not open, but now I have it open. No, I don't, because I need to open it from the correct folder, which is on my desktop, and there it is, and CIA1. There we go. Sorry, I'd moved the folder so Access could no longer see it. So I've got the CIA database open. You can see that I've got quite a few tables in here. I've got 6 tables in here. I've got 4 forms, and I've got 1 report called a products list report. We didn't make that. That was made for us automatically. Not automatically, but it was made as part of the learning material. Let's double left click on it to have a look at it and see what it looks like. Yeah, it's actually not too bad. You can see we've got a running total down here. If we go into design view, just to give us an idea, you can see that they typed in equals sum price. So they were basically adding up all of the prices and all the price fields to give them a sum total of the prices. And there are only 4 fields: product reference, product price, and supplier reference. And it's only on 1 page, so it's quite a small report. We're going to export. We're not actually going to export this report. We're going to export something else, because you don't just need to export reports. You might actually need to export a table. You might need to export a form. So it depends on what you need. So we're going to export the customer details table. Let's have a look at it. And there's very few records in there. There's only 10 records in there. You can see that this table is related to something else because we've got sub data sheets. And there's a few fields in there. So we're going to export this. We'll see how to export it. And the way we do it is we click on the external data tab. We haven't seen this before. We'll have a look at it now. External data contains tools for literally generating data that's going to be used outside Excel. You're going to generate data that you have in Excel to be viewed or used outside Excel. So it's called the external data tab. And we see we have a number of 3 groups. We've import and link, export, and web linked lists. We're not going to be looking at pretty much any of these except for the export group. And even in the export group, we're only going to look at a few of these types of formats that we can export as. Let's click on the Excel export option, which means that we want to export this table, which is in Excel, or sorry, which is in Access. It's our customer details table. We want to export it to Excel so that we can open this table in Excel. So remember, Excel is essentially a worksheet, is essentially a giant table. So we want to export this table in Access so that we can look at it in Excel. So let's click on the Excel button, and we'll get up the following dialog box. We need to specify a number of things here. And the first thing we need to specify is the file name and where we're going to save this file, because this table that we see here is going to be exported as an actual file. So we have to give it a name. It's already got a name. It's calling it customer details, but we can give it another name, and we need to click on browse so that we can actually choose a location on the computer to which we're going to save it. I'm not going to change anything here except to maybe, actually no, I'm not going to change anything at all. We could, if we wanted to, change the name customer details, but I won't. And I'm not going to change the location either. It's currently saving it to the default location: C, users, James, documents, and then customer details. I'll leave it set at that. The second option then is the file format. By default, because I clicked on Excel, it's going to export it as an XLSX file, which you might remember from our Excel days as being the file extension for Excel workbooks. So again, I'm not going to change that. If I wanted to, I could make it an earlier version of Excel, but I don't need to do that. I'm just going to leave it set as .xlsx. That's all I'm going to do there. Now, what I do want to do down here is specify some options. And I'm going to check this box here which says export data with formatting and layout. And what this will do, as it says, is it will preserve the formatting and layout operation when exporting any of the objects: tables, queries, forms, or reports. Not too important for a table here, but definitely very important for a form and for a report. But for tables and queries, not hugely important. But I'm going to take it anyway. I'm going to take it anyway because I want the current format of this table to look the way it is. This would be much more important though for forms and reports when we have lots of formatting included. And that's it. That's all we need to do. We could take the, actually I will take this as well, because rather than go hunting for it, what this will do is it will immediately open the file after the export operation is complete. Normally you wouldn't need to do this, but I'm going to do it now just so I'm not hunting around for the file. So I'm going to click OK. And immediately what's going to happen is, you can't see it because it's opening on my second monitor, but I'm going to drag this over onto from my second monitor onto the screen here, And you can see that, I can't show you both monitors at the same time, but you can see that this table has now been, I can click this close export box now. This table here in Access has now been exported to a file called customer details, an Excel file called customer details. And that's all there is to it. That's how you export a table. I'll just close that down. And that file now exists on your computer. You could email it to somebody, you could print it. It now exists as an Excel file, and it's totally separate from this. Now you may be thinking, well, if I make any changes to the customer details table, if I add in other records, will it appear in the file I've just exported? And the answer is no, it won't. These are now two totally separate files. One has nothing to do with the other. You would have to re-export this file again after you've made whatever changes or added whatever records. You'd have to go through the export process again. So I'm going to close down the customer details table now. We can also export tables without opening them. I had the customer details table open, but we can actually export a table without opening it. So I'm going to left click once on the products table, but I'm not going to open it. I'm going to click, make sure I'm on the external data tab again, and this time I'm going to export this products table as a text file. So we can export as a wide number of files. So notice that the table isn't open, but it doesn't matter because it's going to, when I click on text file, it's going to try to export the object that I have selected. So your object doesn't have to be open. Same again, I can choose a name other than the name that it's suggested. It's suggesting the name based on the object that I am trying to export, so it's called products. I'm not going to change that. .txt means it's a plain text file. Remember that from our Computer Essentials days, and also from our computer, or rather our Microsoft Word days as well. So this means it's just going to be a plain text file. All right. Now the process will export both text and .csv files. I'm going to come back to those in a second. I'm going to click on export data with formatting and layout. Yeah, we don't really need to worry too much about that because there's not going to be, it's not going to retain, there's not much formatting in this, and we can only display so much formatting in text files anyway. But we'll leave that set for now, and I'm going to click OK. And the following dialog box will pop up. You might remember this from our Word days when we were saving as plain text files, or when we were exporting in Excel as well and saving out as a text file in Excel. We won't go into it in too much detail. It's basically asking us to choose the encoding to use for the file. Just leave it set to Windows, okay? Just leave it set to Windows. You don't need to worry about any of these. We'll just leave it set to Windows. It's the default, and I'll click OK. And that's it. I'll click on close, and that's it. That file has now been exported as a text file, Now what I want to do is show you another example. I'm going to do this again. I'm going to make sure the products is still selected over here, and I'm going to click on text file again. And again, I get the same options over here. Now I can't export it as products again because I already have exported a file for products. I don't want to overwrite it, so I'm just going to put in products2.txt, products2.txt. And I'm going to click, will I click browse? No, I won't. No, I'll save it into the same location. All right, and I'm going to click OK. This time I'm not going to tick this. I just want to show you a different thing that can happen. I'm not going to export data with formatting and layout, and I'm going to click OK. The following dialog box, again, this is very similar to something that we would have seen in Excel. The wizard allows you to specify details on how Access should export your data. What export format would you like? We're going to go with this top one here, which is called delimited. And delimited means that we're going to have what's known as a delimiter between each of the fields in the table. And the delimiter in this case is a comma. So a comma is going to separate each of the fields and each of the data in each of those fields in each record. So that's what we mean by delimited. If I click on next, I can choose the kind of delimiter I want. I can go with the comma, but I can also choose a semicolon. Can you see the way it's changed to a semicolon there? I can choose a tab, so it's tabbed out. I can choose a space, or I could choose another. I could type in my own delimiter here, for instance, hyphen sign. But we're not going to do that. We're going to go with, we're going to stick with comma. Okay, we're going to stick with comma. It's kind of the default. And that's it. That's all we need to do there. That's the delimiter we're going to use. And I'm going to click on next. And then we actually get to choose to export the file now. So I'm going to choose the same file name here, products.2.txt. I'm not going to change that, and I'm going to click on finish. And that's it. Now, if you wanted to save these export steps so that you can quickly apply them to future text exports, you could. But I'm not going to bother with that. I'm going to click OK. That's it. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up Notepad, because remember, that's been saved as a plain text file. So I just want to show you what that plain text file looks like when you open it up. Again, I'm doing this on a separate monitor, which you can't see, but I'm dragging Notepad into this monitor now, into my main monitor, and you can see the results of the products table. If I open it up in Access, this is what it looks like in Access, and here's what it looks like when I exported it as a plain text file. All of the information is there, and each field has a delimiter in between it, and the delimiter is simply the comma. So a delimiter is just a character that we use to separate out the fields. That's all there is to that. All right, let's have another one. Let's export the orders table as what's known as something called an XML file. This is for web usage. XML stands for Extensible Markup Language. Now, you don't need to know anything about XML in order to export something from Access as an XML file. But it's basically for viewing on the web. It's handy for viewing on the web if we wanted to upload something so that somebody could look at it on the web. So I'm going to left click on orders. Actually, I'm going to open it because we want to look at it and compare and contrast. And this time on the external data tab, I'm going to go to export again, and I'm going to select XML file. And I get up another dialog box, and it's asking me what do I want to export it as. And I'll just change the name here. I'll just say orders information. Orders information. You don't need to, but I will. And I won't change the location. I'll leave the browse button alone. I'll click OK. And the following dialog box will pop up when Export to XML is chosen, and it asks you what information are you going to export. Are you going to export your data, or are you going to export something called the schema of your data? Now, we're not doing anything about data schema in this section of XML, so don't worry about it. It basically has to do with the structure and the how your data is tied together. But we're just going to export the data, okay? And the schema. But don't worry about what the schema is. We don't need to worry about what it is, okay? We're not going to bother with presentation of your data either. That's going to be unticked. So normally when you do stuff like this and you see boxes that are ticked for you by default, that means that's kind of the most common setup, or the most common process that you'll go through. So just leave these two ticked, and we'll click OK. And then we get a dialog box saying, well, that's it, that's done. You've actually saved your ordersinformation.xml successfully. Again, we could save these export steps if we wanted to, if we were doing multiple XML files and we didn't want to have to keep repeating those steps in the wizard, so that we could quickly apply it. So I'll click on the close dialog box now. Now we can also output a query. Output from queries can be exported in exactly the same way. The chapter in the book here is asking me to create a query in design view. I think some fatigue might be setting in with some of you now, because we've gone through an awful lot of stuff. So I'm not going to go through creating a query again. I'm just going to open up a database which has a query in it. Of course, I'll need to actually Geography 1. Yeah, no, Geography 1 doesn't have one either. Let me go back out onto the desktop, and I know that Houses has one. I'm pretty sure that Houses has one. Or does Daily have one? Yeah, Daily has one. Daily has one query. So let's see how we can export a query. Now remember, a query is an extraction of subdata. It's a selection of records from a larger collection of records. You're extracting only certain information. So that might be something that you want to export as well. So I've got the queries section over here, and I've got the owners query. I've only got one query in the queries section called owners. I'm in the Daily 1 database. That's the mechanics database that we looked at. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on, now what will we export it as? We'll export it as, we'll go with Excel again. Okay, so we'll click Excel. And again, it's asking me, what do I want to export it as? I can export it as owners, because it's basing it on the owners query. So it's just going to call it owners, but I'll just call it owners information. So that's what it is. You don't have to. You can leave the name as you want, and I'll leave the browsing location set the same. So it's just going to save it in C, users, James documents. Again, I'll leave file format set to Excel workbook. I'll make sure that this box is ticked, export data with formatting and layout, and then I'll click OK. And that's it. Again, I could save the export steps. I'm going to click on close. I'm now going to open up Excel. And I'm going to I don't need to, but I'm going to look for that file which is in my documents folder. and just show you exactly what it looks like. Owner's information, just drag this onto the main monitor, and if I double left click on the owner's query, you can see there was only 3 records in it. There it is in Access, and here's what it looks like in Excel. So exporting data is simply a question of taking data from either a table, a form, a query, or a report, and exporting it into another format, like a plain text format, or maybe an Excel sheet. We've seen XML, that's for files that might be viewable on the web. You can also export it as a PDF and so on and so forth. Again, you won't be asked to do anything too major in the question. It might only be literally export something as an Excel file. Just watch out for the file name and the location. So that, folks, is pretty much it. That is the end of Microsoft Access, and that is the end, in fact, of our ECDL course, of our 7 modules. So it's been a long trip from September, and we've gone through a lot of stuff. And Access, should I say, is probably the trickiest one for a lot of people. If you're going to struggle with any of the modules, you probably will have struggled with Access, and I completely understand that, and I'm sympathetic to it. I'm doubly sympathetic to it because I've had to teach it remotely. I've had to teach it through these videos. It's not ideal. I would much have preferred us to be in the classroom where I could go around from person to person and answer questions that people have, and you would have seen me doing a lot more examples as well on the board, and you could ask me questions in real time. The videos are not ideal, but they're better than nothing. The advantage of the videos is that you can go back over them, pause them, and keep repeating and replaying parts of them, so that something that is not making sense can hopefully eventually sink into your head. Whereas when classes are done, they're done, and you might be trying to remember something that I'd said in class and you may not be able to remember it. That's the advantage of videos. There are 2 revision exercises at the bottom of this video. Just click on the description, click on the show more in the description of the video, and you'll be able to download them as PDFs. I am over the weekend going to prepare a bonus video, which you don't need to watch, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a database from scratch, put some records in there, and then create a query, a form, and a report based on the data in that table. And I'll also do a relationship. So we're talking maybe in an hour tops. It's just going to tie everything together. You don't need to look at it. There's going to be no new information in there, nothing that we haven't looked at in these 8 videos. But I hope they were helpful. I hope they were useful. As always, please keep in touch. Please let me know how you're getting on, and if you have any questions or any problems with any of the material. And I will see you at some stage. I'll send you all an email next week when that additional video is ready, and then I'll be in touch hopefully as well with regards to the date for the exam. So thanks for watching, everybody, and best of luck, and let me know how things are going for you.